cool. And we are almost there with our last session for the day. Ajay, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Hi, Michael. Yes, I see you. I hear you. So we are pretty much on time. We have 1 minute to check any setup if you are going to share a screen.
I'm just going to turn up the speaker a little bit. I presume I'm nicely audible. I'm getting a good read here from the meters.
I hear you clearly. Yes.
Okay, good. I hear you more clearly now that I've turned my speaker up, so that's good.
Ajay, can we hear you?
yes.
Okay, cool. So mic testing 1, 2, 3 done. I will let you start.
Mic testing or mic checking?
Mic testing. I have no expectations against to validate it for the mic. Check against what? I will only test it for my experience of quality experience of the sound. Anyway, so welcome back everyone. I hope you're all there in the show, and we have Ajay and we have Michael Bolton. Both of them do not need an introduction. I'm not going to spend more time. I would rather let Ajay and Michael Bolton start the fireside chat. Where is the fire though?
With all the talk so far, I think it's there in the audience heart.
Okay, all good. Then the stage is yours. Don't burn us at all though. See ya.
Perfect. Good. So thank you everyone, and thanks Michael for this opportunity. They said have a fireside chat interview with Michael. I said I'm just going to talk to Michael. The next question was where are your questions? I said I don't have any questions. We'll explore on the way, on the fly, and we'll have an exploratory discussion. So first question, how did you get into testing?
Oh, really?
Quarter deck. Tell us more than.
It's kind of, well, I got into testing because I'm a human being in one sense, right? We all are born as testers. We are born to play. We're born to learn, explore our world, to experiment with it, to develop experience. And that's, oh look, there's my alert that I've got I've got a thing coming up in 15 minutes. It's the interview with Ajay at the Tribal Qonf. I think I better dismiss that because it's already underway. But human beings are natural testers. They're natural explorers. They're natural discoverers. And so that's when I got started by birth.
Did you get started being paid for it?
Being paid for it. Well, you see, that's another sort of weird thing because I was paid to do data entry for a headhunter. And the reason I was paid to do data entry, in fact, was because I was in theater before I got involved in this silly business. And if you've ever worked in theater, one thing you know is when you're working in theater, you're not always working in theater. And so I had these, the skills associated with keyboarding and typing and I was a computer hobbyist and so on, but I didn't have any work, so I went to the headhunter, and the headhunter said, oh, we got a great job for you, it's going to be perfect. And I said, what? And she said, well, we need somebody, the toy show, there's a convention in town, and they're selling toys, and they're marketing toys to companies, and we need somebody to dress up as a dancing bear and hand out pamphlets, leaflets.
Okay.
And I said, oh, wait a minute. I know computer things, word processing, spreadsheets, databases, all sorts of stuff that could, how much are you paying for the dancing bear thing? And they told me, and it was like terrible. So I said, well, how come you don't they said, oh, we didn't know about your computer stuff. And I said, oh, how come you don't know that? I filled out a form. And they said, oh, no, well, we got a big backlog of forms. We got 1,400 forms to be entered still. So I said, okay, tell you what, I've got a great idea. How about you hire me to put the data in? Well, they said, oh, that's great, because, you know, people won't stick on that job. So I said, well, I'll stick on the job long enough to get my CV in, and then you can send me out the great jobs. Everybody be happy.
Where is this, Michael?
This would have been about 1988, I think. 1987, 88.
3 years old. Hmm.
Well, I am an old guy, I guess. But of course, being a lazy person, I had this idea that I could use the computer to do a lot of the repetitive work of data entry. Now, that sounds kind of weird, but basically what I had was I had something that was quite unusual at the time. I had a macroing system whereby for certain classes of repetitive keystrokes, I could just map it to a single key and it'd be done. Which, by the way, is why I'm not that excited about test automation these days. Because all the test automators are doing it. Now, I'm dismissing it too much. But a huge part of what the managers think is impressive about test automation is fast data entry. Oh, wow. Well, I've been involved with fast data entry for 32 years now. It's not that big a deal. But that's what dazzles people, is the fact, ooh, look at that. All those characters appear on the screen all of a sudden. Woo! Isn't that amazing? So anyway, I realized that the database that I was entering data into was not as flexible as it could be, wasn't as powerful as it could be. And because I had studied databases and played with databases and dabbled with databases a little bit, I could figure out some code that I could write that would make it easier for the consultants, that is to say the people, the headhunters, that's what I mean, to find just the right people that much more easily and that much more quickly. So that was kind of cool, and they were dead impressed about that. So the guy who was responsible for IT at this firm, it's a pretty small firm, but he needed some help, so I started to pitch in there. So here I was writing databases. Well, I'm still not officially a tester yet. I'm not being paid as a tester, but in order for my little product, which I wrote and documented and so on, in order for that to be okay, I had to test it. And I could ask the people using it to test it, but they were terrible testers. They didn't think in terms of what could go wrong. Now, as the builder of that app, I had an insight onto certain things that could go wrong, but not all of them, because, of course, when you're building something, you're focused on success and not on how it might fail. So I would be surprised fairly consistently by little ways in which it would not do what I had anticipated or what I had desired. Now, not very long after that, the guy at the IT guy recognized that I was kind of getting sort of tired of work there, and he noticed that one of the companies that we'd been in touch with, Quarterdeck, as you mentioned, was looking for tech support people in Toronto. And so, okay, so now I've moved from data entry, database programming, general IT support. Now I've got a tech support under my belt. And finally, in early 1994, Skip Lottie, who was my first test manager, asked me to be seconded to the testing department, because they had a great big project that needed immense amounts of testing. It was really very complicated. It was called DeskView X. It was an implementation of the X window system for DOS. This is back in 1994. A pretty impressive kind of technology there. For the time. So that was January 1994. January 3rd, I think, 1994 was the first day that I was paid to be a tester. And not very long after that, actually, I got promoted to program manager, which is kind of like lead tester attached to the project. All the testers in-house would sort of move around from one project to the next, but I was attached to that product line, the QAM386 and desk view, memory management and multitasking software. And that was kind of prestigious because at the time, those were among the best selling pieces of software in the world. They were on the top 10, number one sometimes, PC Magazine. But I say that not to boast, because I didn't write them, but I say that because it gives you an idea of how fragile the IT world is, the software world is. Because top of the market, 1994, the company was sold in 1998. Basically our cash cow died when Windows 95 came along and removed the need for DOS memory management and multitasking. So that's why I'm saying, why I've been saying for years, you do have to adapt, or you'll find yourself working for somebody else if you're lucky enough to be working for anybody at all. So anyway, that's the long story. Origin stories for testers, though, in a way that I don't find them that interesting. I don't know about you, because we all stumble into it, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, from a SME to a tester, that was my journey. From
what was your
expert of printing technology?
Painting technology?
Printing.
Printing. Oh, yeah, that was complicated. Do you know, in the 1990s, was it the Laser Writer 2, the Apple Laser Writer 2, was the most powerful computer Apple sold. Had a fatter processor than its computers did and more memory. How about that?
Interesting times. So, what has changed in testing from, say, 1994 to 2020? Now that
not enough! Not enough! Holy Hannah! Not enough has changed. You know what we've got? It seems to me, now, I got to make a distinction here, because at Quarterdeck, I grew up in an environment where there was none of this test case business. We were moving too fast. We needed to know stuff too quickly, and we had a compatibility, a set of compatibility considerations that would blow your mind, because we had to work on every DOS PC that was available. It was like the Wild West. Every application which ran under DOS came with its own drivers for printing, for interfacing with keyboard and mouse a lot of the time. They all came with their own stuff, certainly for displays, for videos and so on. It's like, so there's that. And then we had to make sure that those products all did their thing under DeskView and under QEMM. And there was it's a geeky kind of story, but basically there was a way where you could get away with doing stuff on regular DOS machines, such that you couldn't get away with that same thing on 386 family machines, ones that had sophisticated memory management chips on them. So stuff would stop working under our products, under QAM386, because what we did was we turned on stuff in the hardware that would protect access to certain chunks of memory, so that applications couldn't crash each other. But that, for all the world, looked like a bug in our stuff, because you'd run your program, then you'd install our stuff, then you'd run your program, and your program would crash. One of our developers said our error, the message for that condition, which was a general protection fault, by the way, right? Processor exception 13. We had an in-house band called Exception 13. It was great. But the exception 13 would go away when you were running the system in real mode. So if you took QAM386 off your system, then your app would run just fine. Your product would run just fine. So it looked for all the world like we were causing the problem. So one of our developers suggested that the message that heralded the arrival of an exception 13 ought to say, "Congratulations, QAM386 has just found a bug in your product," which was kind of true. That products were depending on this phenomenon called segment wrap, where after 60, you get to the end of a 64K memory block, you wrap around to the bottom again. Not allowed on the 386 processor in v86 mode. Yeah.
So, with so many changes, so many configurations, how did you learn to test? Or was there any formal way of learning? Or what was your style of learning?
The style of learning in that day and age was to plunge in, right? We would plunge in and we would run up against confusion and trying to figure stuff out and not being able to get something to work. In fact, though, being a tech support person and being a tester are very similar in that respect. You're a detective. You're collecting clues. You're trying to see patterns in things. You're using your social network. That is, your group inside the company, which included for us, because we had really great access to them, the developers, other testers, tech support people in other countries who could speak other languages. Sometimes that was really important. We also, by virtue of, I was kind of lucky in Canada because by virtue of the fact that I went out to trade shows and conferences and stuff, people knew me personally. I had met them and I would shake their hands and chat with them. And so when they had particularly gnarly problems, they would call me up. So I remember in one particular case, we had this weird thing where if you started desk view, the machine would crash, leaving only the letters VD in the upper left corner of the screen. And it was on this, I know, it's like, people would call up and say, my computer has a disease. So, VD. So, but because of that, I got a call from a value-added reseller, which was a computer retailer back in the day, and he said, "Oh yeah, we met at the conference. Listen, I'm selling this line of video cards, and they have this effect. Oh, that's great! Please can you send me one?" And he would, right? So the world was smaller, maybe in some sense, or maybe it was because we were doing more stuff. All the way through being a tester and a program manager, I was still doing online support of our products on what we used to call the internet, which was Usenet, and on CompuServe and on the Quarterdeck bulletin board systems or various things like that. So problem solving and trying to figure out how stuff worked was, there were so many different ways of approaching it. And that's one of the things I learned, which is how to learn quickly. All of us were in that situation then.
Any specific instance that you remember has had a huge impact on your learning? Any book?
Well, it's like asking what's your favorite Beatle album. Certainly, I mean, the first day I was at Quarterdeck as a tech support person. I trained as a tech support person starting in 1990. I went down there and I said to Skip, who was not the test manager at that point, he was just sitting next to me, and I said, "Man, there's so much stuff here you got to learn," because it was typical for us to take between 20 and 28 phone calls a day from customers, and every customer is coming in with a different problem because our software was designed to work with everything. So people would call us about everything. We had a knowledge base, which was compiled by a very, very smart guy who is also a wonderful writer. And we had some tools which would allow you to do very fast lookups of stuff for the time, right? It used to be that you would have to look stuff up, in a list. Well, this gave like an instantaneous, it was like an internal Google. It was a product actually called Ask Sam. And then later that got replaced by Folio Views. Did the same kind of thing. It was essentially an internal Google search, except with a very small data set. Instead of all the world's data, it was just our knowledge base. So that was a contributor too. But anyway, I said to Skip, I'm just blown away by the amount of stuff you've got to learn, you got to know. And he says, it's a slow day at Quarterdeck when you don't learn 5 new interesting things. That would be a slow day. But
it was 5 new things every day.
Well, I guess when you get a lot of input and a lot of impetus, and you've got an imperative to get this problem fixed, you learn to exercise all kinds of different muscles. Some of them are muscles in your head. Some of them are related to the network of tech support people and testers who are around you, programmers who are around you. In fact, Qonf was such a cool company because one of the best tech support people in the company was one of the sales guys. He was responsible for government sales, and so he invested himself really strongly in the internal mail system and in the knowledge base and so on that we were developing. So I'd like to put in a big plug for that, the idea that learning is partly individual, but it's very significantly social. I come to depend on the brains of my colleagues, setting up stuff for teaching online classes, which is what I'm going to be doing tomorrow morning at this time. I used a whole bunch of stuff from James's experience with that. You know, James, it's sort of what we do in RST. You know, we do the learning, so you don't have to. Or we make it more efficient anyway. But I also, a shout out to Santosh Topad, who has helped me over and over again with two things. One, hardening my my website and my blog against intruders, but also in helping me learn stuff about security, which I felt I needed to know. So I went out and hired Santosh to give me lessons for a couple of sessions, and just took notes like crazy, and I had him walk me through some of the things that he would do as a security tester. So I'm a little baby security tester now, little itty bitty tiny security tester. And then you can see some of the other things behind me that have contributed to this journey as well. I don't think I've ever 100% regretted spending money on a book. There's always something in one book or another that will, something or another rather, in every book that will be valuable. Okay, so I'm now, looking on history and on science studies and all that sort of stuff. All these things contribute to testing. So you got to welcome it is the thing. I think you've got to be a fisher of information.
Fisher of information. On that note, say you are starting your testing journey maybe today. What would you do?
What would I do? I would take a job as a tester. That's the first thing I would do. And then I would remember from my tech support background. If you haven't had a tech support background, I would suggest trying it. But remember this. The job of the tester is to ask and answer this question, first and foremost, before the tech support people have to receive it from the customers. Are there problems that threaten the value of the product?
Shouldn't we ask pass or fail?
No, thank you for the softball. No, because a test can pass and still there can be terrible problems in the product, and a test can fail and it's not a big deal. It's not a big problem. So what I want to know is, as a tester, so that I can get this to my client as quickly as possible, are there problems that threaten the value of the product to some person who matters? And not just, by the way, to the customer. Not just to the customer, but also to the tech support people. One of the things we had in as a means of evaluating the significance of a bug that we found in testing at Qonf, we had this question in our minds: will it make the phone ring? Okay? If it's a problem that's going to make the phone ring, then get on it, get after it, start analyzing it and studying it. If it's not a problem that's going to make the phone ring, if it's not a terribly consequential problem, don't spend a lot of time for it. Get on the hunt for problems that really matter at that point. Another thing I would say to testers is set yourself free. Set yourself free. The way you set yourself free is, that bundle of test cases they gave you? think of those as suggestions or hints. And some people say, but Michael, I got this huge stack of test cases I have to get done by the end of the day. My experience goes like this. If you find enough bugs that matter, then the test manager and the project manager and the developers will be so busy arguing with each other, they won't even look at the pile of test cases you're supposed to be doing. Right? Those are just suggestions. Those are hints, and those were probably written by people who didn't understand testing very well. And my proof is those documents exist. If those documents exist, that's because somebody was more focused on an artifact than they were on an activity. So, prepare for yourself a set of ways of recognizing problems, oracles, and recognize that the ways you have of recognizing problems are certainly not limited to the test case, but they're not limited to the requirements document either. They're not limited to a specification. They're not limited to any of that stuff. Those things can be really valuable in terms of doing that. But one of the things I started saying a few years ago was, instead of thinking about use cases exclusively, consider also misuse cases or abuse cases. Think of how the product could experience problems in its relationship with the person using it or the person who has to support it. Think of how a problem like that could occur during a pattern of reasonably foreseeable misuse. Right? Think about how people might, one of the things we say in the RST class, the developer always says, no user would ever do that, by which the developer means no user that I've thought of and that I like would do that on purpose in a way that I've conceived of, right? So let's just think, what kind of users have we not thought of? What kind of users have we thought of but don't like hackers or thieves or identity, identity thefts, people who are going to poke in or steal stuff? What about a user that we have thought of and that we do like? What might they do by accident? And by exploiting those ideas, right, by putting those ideas to work, we can start to look at, somebody gives us a test case. Well, what was really going on in the test case? What's the motivation for the test case? What is the risk that the test case is presumably trying to help highlight? Well, my contention forever, like since 2000, has been, if you got the motivation noted, then you don't have to worry about the steps of the details.
Do you mean the test idea behind the test case?
Right. The risk idea, or the problem that we're going to expose, or the vulnerability that might be there in the product. If we think in terms of what is the weakness in the product that could lead to risk to the business, right? A loss or harm or diminished value to the customer, and therefore a risk to the business. If we think in those terms, what could go wrong here? What problem could be here? Then we don't need a set of scripted procedures to follow. Sometimes that's helpful in terms of getting something set up. Like, for instance, when I mentioned that I was setting stuff up for our classes, one of the things I have to set up is an instance of an AWS a cloud instance that has a Mattermost, which is a Slack-like chat server on it. It's like Slack. Well, a procedure for setting that up, that's great. It's really wonderful. That's just what I need. But that's a convergent task, a task that I want to come to a particular conclusion. But testing isn't like that. Testing is open-ended, right? Any particular idea or any particular suggestion we have for how there might be a vulnerability in the product, that doesn't converge on a specific vulnerability. That focuses on a vulnerability, and it kind of hits it like a prism and expands out into all kinds of other possible problems there could be. So a testing is a divergent mission.
Okay, so I will let you sip that and then ask the question. So then now the tester who joined today is now learning all of that, and then gets to meet these two terms: automation, AI. Now what next? What do we do? There is a new term thrown like SDET. Now, as
when I hear a term like that, the first thing is to, first of all, just what does it stand for, right? And then ponder for a minute, what does it really mean? For example, automation. What does automation really mean? Well, automation, it seems to me, if we think in terms of it as a noun, automation is some kind of contrivance, some kind of usually it's something mechanical, of course, that accelerates some human activity somehow, or extends it, or enhances it, or amplifies it, or intensifies it, or enables it somehow. Okay. All right, so that's kind of cool. There are things that automation can enhance and extend and accelerate and intensify. All right, what? Well, let's see. What's that?
Automation testing.
Automated testing. Okay, so now let's pause for a second and think about what testing is. What is testing? Testing is evaluating a product by learning about it through experiencing, exploring, and experimenting. And that's the definition that James Bach and I use in the rapid software testing class, and that includes, at least to some degree, studying the product, modeling the product, monitoring the test space, monitoring the risk, modeling the risk. Modeling how we will cover the product with testing. It includes generating ideas and expanding on ideas that we've generated, and then refining ideas that we've expanded on so that we can make them a little bit more tractable. It means overproducing ideas. It means abandoning ideas that we've overproduced. It means recovering ideas that we've abandoned. It means keeping ourselves organized. It means navigating, map making, collaborating with other people, risk analysis, critical thinking. Now, of that big long list of things that I just mentioned, starting with learning, which of those can machinery actually do? None of them. None of them. Not a single one of those things can the machinery do. But the machinery can help us in certain parts of those tasks. Evaluating a product by learning about it through exploration, experiencing, experimenting. Well, I didn't include recording and reporting in my list of things. Well, machinery can definitely help us with recording and reporting. It can help us with visualizing mental models that we develop and sharing those models, like collaboration with other people. Machinery can help us with that stuff. Machinery can help us with data entry. Machinery can help us with very rapid comparisons of what this program is putting out compared to what that program dumped onto a spreadsheet, or what that analyst dumped onto a spreadsheet many moons ago. Machinery can help us with that. That is the part of testing. Those are parts of testing that can be automated. Mechanical tasks. But what happens in testing is not mechanical. It's what happens in your head. Testing, at the center of testing, is a process of analysis. Now, I had a big fight with James recently, with James Bach, because he talked about how you could automate analysis. And James, how can you say that? How can you talk about automated analysis? And he says, yeah, but a machine can go through and do the processing and the calculations and so on. Yeah, but the calculation is not analysis. The calculation is basically a bunch of string transformations. You put some data in, an algorithm churns on it, and then it spits stuff out. But that's not analysis. That helps with the analysis a lot, because if I have a big table of data and I want to see patterns in that data, a great way to do it is to run that through some kind of charting program, through the charting mechanisms in Excel or R, right? Or there's another one we used recently, YED, I think it was called. You can do all that kind of stuff.
So machine is reminding me that we have crossed 30 minutes, and I have a rapid fire round for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Every word I share, please share what comes to your mind immediately.
Okay.
Test cases.
Ugh.
Nipping.
Nipping. Mentioning in passing. A great, fast social way of trying to alert people to something and trying to figure out how people are thinking about it.
Moleskine notebook.
Moleskine notebook. Right pocket.
Test framing.
Test framing. The set of logical connections that inform a test from the risk idea and the business value at the very top, right down to the atoms of what the tester is actually doing and thinking as he or she performs the test.
ISTQB. BBST.
What's that? BBST? Oh, good stuff.
A few hiccups.
A few hiccups. Acceptable quality, familiarity, explainability, world, history, image, claims, comparable products, user desires, product purpose, standards and statutes, an internal list that I've got of ways of recognizing problems and ways of describing those problems to people so that we can make decisions about their significance.
Ruspic STM10.
You mean Crux Cupid? It's been updated. That's a capability, reliability, usability, charisma, security, scalability, compatibility, performance, installability, and then developer-related or development internal quality criteria like supportability, testability, maintainability, portability, and localizability. Those are quality criteria, ways in which people might get value of the product, or in their absence, if they're compromised somehow, ways in which value might be threatened.
Safety language.
Safety language. Safety language is about calibrating your speech, and therefore your thinking, such that you avoid over-committing to something, such that people might misunderstand, or you might be placing too much certainty in something. It's kind of like it's an insurance policy against being too sure. Testers shouldn't be too sure of stuff all the time. We should also always preserve uncertainty. What's that?
The last phrase, bug versus issue.
Bug versus issue. Bug for us is anything that threatens the value of the product. Issue is anything that threatens the value of the testing. So I think it would be a good thing for testers to be more evocative, to speak up more about issues, things that are slowing down testing or making it harder or making it less valuable. That's an important mission for a tester to accomplish, I believe, which is to advocate for testability. That's one thing that we can definitely, one quality criterion where we can say this really matters to us. Because it really matters to you. Anything that slows down testing or makes it harder gives bugs more time and more opportunity to hide out. So issue is the word we use for that in rapid software testing. We've got to get better at discussing that with our clients, not just with each other, which we do far too often, it seems to me.
Okay, so Brijesh has a question. I'm taking audience questions. In 2020, people around us keep talking about AI ML. What's your take on the influence of AI in testing?
The influence of AI in testing is, at this point, I think, pretty negligible, really. I don't see a whole lot of usefulness for it. But over the ages, I've said, we don't. Artificial intelligence isn't going to help us if we don't have enough of the natural kind. And I think that one of the things that we're running into right now is this fantastic faith in machinery, in algorithms. But my colleague James refers to artificial intelligence as automated irresponsibility, right? And I don't want to see. I've got a list of things that AI actually stand for here. Irresponsibility.
We'll take that up on Slack. And the next question.
Okay. Well, okay, but I want to answer the other question too. The other part of AI in testing, and that is AI. It seems to me provides lifetime job security for truly skilled testers. And the reason it does, yes, it does. The reason it does that is because there is so little critical thinking involved in the application of AI. I brainstormed the other day a list of threats to the validity of the training set for AI. Data that is inconsistently arranged, right? Data that is in different formats and thus has to be manipulated before we put it in. Data that is unrepresentative. Data that is, the sort of flip side of that, over-representative of certain things. Data that has lots of outliers in it. Data that is noisy or messy. Data that has been crowdsourced. Oh, God, help us with that stuff. That's not going to be very reliable. So there's this wonderful book, which is how I begin so many of my sentences. Where is it? It's over here. It's over here. It is Kirk and Miller. There it is, right here. There you go. This is a very short little book. It's also unreasonably expensive if you compare it, if you go in the number of pages. But it talks about reliability and validity in qualitative research, but it also has lots of great ideas in it for reliability and validity in anything. Reliability is basically how consistent are our observations, and validity is, will everybody agree? Now, I'm sort of grotesquely summarizing those things, but as testers, it's really, really important for us to consider how our data for training sets for AI are inherently unreliable in some sense. How might they be unreliable? And if we don't have reliability, we don't have validity either. Okay.
Nowadays, people are not asking of your skills as a tester. They're asking how well you can automate things using a tool. What are your thoughts of how can we change the mindset of hiring people? Your 60 seconds.
Okay, 60 seconds. First of all, we've got to start being smarter as we speak amongst ourselves, right? We can't just dismiss the idea that this stuff actually matters. So one great way to get other people to stop talking about automation and testing is to stop talking about automation and testing quite so much and start focusing on the things that really matter. Risk analysis, critical thinking, scientific thinking. Is there a problem here? Focus on that and then acknowledge, hey, tools can help us. Absolutely. Let's get good at that, but let's not drop all the other things. So let's talk those things up. Tell stories about how we found problems.
At present, a lot of automation speakers talk about faster time to market. What cases you would name where faster does not mean better? Question by Roman.
Faster time to market. Well, I mean, let's see. What
cases you would name where faster does not mean better?
iTunes. Well, I don't know. iTunes. I mean, if we look all over, we see this incredible rush. Well, here's a case where faster doesn't mean better. This story came to me while I was with clients in China. They were talking about how important it is to get to market quickly, how important it is to get to market fast. We value speed over everything else. So to those of you living in India, this should apply as well. I have a swell plan from getting to MG Road to Koramangala in Bangalore. And my swell plan involves me getting a rickshaw driver. No, can't. That an auto driver wouldn't be able to do this. I'm going to get a guy with a Ferrari, right, a really fast car, and I'm going to get him to drive me at 250 kilometers per hour to Koramangala. How well is that going to do? Right? I'm not even going to get there in a reasonable amount of time. It's going to be a disaster. I'm going to have to deal with the ambulances and the police and all kinds of other stuff that are going to delay my trip. People keep complaining that testing takes time, but James gave me this line, and it's just so beautiful. Testing doesn't take time. Prudence takes time. Right? Sanity takes time. If speed is the only thing that matters, go ahead, release it, and we'll learn.
I've never heard this question. BBST or RST?
Well, it's based on a false premise. BBST and RST. Why not?
What do you think it takes for a tester to become a great tester?
Well, there's so many ways to become a great tester, of course, right? There's so many different ways in which testers can be great. Some testers are really good at organizing social networks of people. Even though they themselves are not necessarily great testers, they're good leaders. They set up environments where people, social environments, where people can do their best work. Some testers are really, really analytical and can wrap their head around large amounts of data. Some testers are good programmers, and therefore they can enable other testers with tools that those programmer style testers create. Some testers are very empathetic, and they think in terms of how people might experience problems in the field. My answer, I guess, would be to do two things. Take the skill that you're best at and get even better. And take the skills that you're not so good at and diversify them. Plunge into them a little bit and attract friends who can help you learn them. And Ajay, you yourself are a living example of exactly how this works. When you set up weekend testers help me remember, it's Parama, Harisapad, and Santosh, right? And Manoj?
Yeah. Paripala, Sharath. Yeah.
That's right, Sharath. Barigata, right? That's right. I'm mistaking Sharath with Santosh, right? That group of people, which I became aware of in 2008, was it?
2009.
2008, 2009. Deeply inspiring. This is how we do it, folks. We get together, a number of people who say, you know what, we can't depend on our employers to train us. We don't necessarily have the money or the time that we would like to dedicate ourselves to, a course taught by some expensive Westerner. We're gonna decide to study testing and to challenge each other and to give each other problems to solve and puzzles to solve, and we're going to share how we solve them. That's how we do it. That's how we do it, by challenging each other and by accepting those challenges and by learning from that experience.
It's coming back in July.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Let me know how I can help.
Sure.
I really want to help with that effort.
And I think we have hit that mark, 6:30. I would let Lalit take over. And thank you very much, Michael. With zero scripted questions, we have done this interview. Yeah.
That's right. I didn't see any of the questions beforehand. So there you go.
Yeah, scripts are bad. Scripts are bad. We don't support scripting.
Well, scripts are all right when you get a machine to run them, right? The machine needs scripts. Machine can't do without scripts. But let's make the machine do interesting scripts, not just the boring ones. And by the way, I guess I'm off to the Slack channel now to start answer questions and comments and stuff like that. So I will do that. It's only, it's 9:30 in the morning for me. So I got all day to respond to this sort of stuff. So as long as people are hanging around, I will too.
All right, people, make use of this opportunity. Michael Bolton will be there. Everyone else is also there. I'll let you continue. And now let's move on to other interesting parts and closing remarks. Thank you, Michael.
Namaste. Namaste to all of you.
Ciao.